Hi, everyone, and welcome to Parmjit Speaks. Today is episode number 8. I wanted to make sure I have the right numbers up, the right amount of fingers up. So today's episode number 8, and today I have Darren LaCroix. And Darren, did I say your last name right?
No, but that's okay.
Well, actually, before I get into what this episode is about, why don't you share how to say your last name correctly?
Well, normally in the United States, it's LaCroix. If you're in Montreal, Quebec, or France, it would be Lacroix.
La Croix, French.
Oui, oui.
Okay, I love it. I love it. Thank you. Thank you for sharing the correct pronunciation. So, friends, so folks who are listening, Darren is not just a friend, but he has been a coach of mine. And Darren is a world-renowned speaker, so a certified speaker. Or actually, I think the acronym is CSP, right? Certified
Speaking
Speaking
profession.
Professional. I knew I was gonna mess that up, but I was close, right?
That's
So
okay.
and Darren is also a comedian. So Darren, actually, I'm going to let you introduce yourself because obviously I think you'll do a better job of it than I am currently. So why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Well, hey, thanks for having me here. I am a friend and a fan, and I love what you're doing. I want to help and encourage you any way I could. And I think we learn so much from other people's stories,
Yeah.
being that sponge, being eager. My short version of my story is I had been told my whole life, you're not funny. You need to be a business person. You need to be a business person. So as a child, I listened to well-meaning adults who lied to me. I mean, they had my best interest at heart. I get it, but they told me, no, 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 funny, that's not you. You go over here. Business, that maybe you can do. So I
Yeah.
went to 4 years of business school, went out for the American dream. I bought a Subway sandwich shop back in 1991, 1990, 1991, somewhere in there. And Subway was the fastest growing franchise at the time, 5,000 stores and growing rapidly. Number one growing, fastest growing franchise.
Yeah.
And they had a 98% success rate. And somehow, due to ego and thinking I knew better than the system, I found myself in that 2%. And so I had to sell the business at a loss about a year and a half later. It was
Yeah.
devastating. I was down. I was depressed. And one of my buddies gave me a motivational tape of a man named Brian Tracy. And if you're not familiar, motivational, inspirational, success expert. And he asked a question. He said, what would you dare to dream if you knew you wouldn't fail?
Uh-huh.
I thought about it. I'm like, if I wouldn't fail, if I didn't fail, I would be a comedian. How cool would that be? Make
Yeah.
an audience laugh and earn a living at that. That would be the ultimate. But all of a sudden, the little voice on my shoulder said, but that's not you. You're not funny, which was true. I wasn't funny. However, that wasn't the question. The question was, what would you dare to dream if you knew you wouldn't fail? So I went back to that 8-year-old dreamer. And I said, I'm down, depressed, lost my business, live at home with mom and dad. It can't get too much worse. So what do I have to lose? And here's one of the motivating factors is I couldn't live with the regret of wondering, what if? What if Brian Tracy was right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I could deal with bombing, but I couldn't deal with the regret of just wondering. So I didn't make it. It wasn't a dream at that point. It was just, I got to do this one
Yeah.
time. So I listening to these motivational tapes, they were, self-development. This is interesting. It makes me feel good about myself. I got potential. I got to listen to I was listening to the wrong people. I got to listen to the right people. So
Yeah.
in hearing that, they said, and this is project management, this is life, go to people who are the best and ask them. They think differently. And that was big for me. So I said, well, when I told my friends and family, they compared me to Jerry Seinfeld, which is not fair. Don't compare yourself to people the best in
Yeah.
their world.
Yeah.
Be inspired by them. Ask them questions. But everyone's journey is different.
Yeah.
So I walked into my very first comedy club and very shy, quiet introvert, worked up all the courage I could and walked up to the comedian that night. You know him, Chris McGuire.
Yep.
And I said, hi, my name is Darren. I want to try this. What do I need to do? And he asked me a question. He said, are you funny? I said, no. He said, good. Like, good? What do you mean good?
Yeah.
he meant it too. He said, good, because now you don't think you're funny. You're not going to be disappointed at the beginning. And he said two things. Number one, go to open mic nights, watch other people just starting out. Well, duh.
Yeah.
And he said, number two, you need to go get the book. I'm like, book? There's a book on stand-up comedy? Of course, there's books on everything, but I wasn't thinking that way. So I went and got the book. I went to an open mic night 2 days later, Stitches Comedy Club, Boston, Massachusetts, right outside of Fenway Park. I remember walking in and the sticky floors, and I could smell the stale beer. I thought, this is where the cool kids hang out. And I watched people go up for their first time, and they were horrible. And I thought, I could do that.
Yeah.
Actually inspired me. I could do that. And that was a game changer right then and there. So I committed. I went to Stitches every Sunday for 2 months. And April 26, 1992, I went up. I brought a bunch of my friends with me, because this wasn't just me standing up in front of a group of strangers. This was me facing that scared, timid mommy's boy who never risked anything. That it was a game changer. It was like Luke Skywalker blowing up the Death Star. This was, so I brought my friends with me. I said, make sure I go up there. I don't care if I kick or scream or cry or whine, make sure I go up there, because I'm never doing this again.
Yeah.
So I go up on stage, I'm shaking, I'm scared, and I was so nervous that my mouth was not connected to my body. And I said, I was talking about this rocket launch in my hometown. I said, the rocket took off and it went vertically, but I did horizontal with my arm. And I just said, oh no.
Yeah.
Well, I said another word, but I said, all of a sudden everyone started laughing. I'm like, wait, why are you laughing? That's not where you're supposed to laugh, but I'll take it.
Yeah.
As I walked off the stage that night, one of the other comedians was consoling me. He said, don't worry, man, it's just your first time. And I remember thinking, don't worry, it's my first. Did you see what I did?
Yeah.
I got to laugh. No one told me I could do this. In that 5 minutes of time, I had one thing that worked. I could get rid of everything that didn't and figure out how to reproduce the one thing that did. And I could do this. And I said, you know what? George Burns is 100 years old doing stand-up comedy. I don't care how long it takes me to figure out, but I was all in. I was all in. So I found every mentor I could, took every class that I could, and they taught me the most important thing to become a comedian is stage time. Writing is important, but they said, we don't care if you're good. We care if you don't go up. And that was a game changer for me. So whether it's project management or whatever it is you want to conquer, what's that one habit that's probably the scariest habit? That's probably where the most growth potential is. So if you want to be a great project manager, who are the great project managers? What books do they read? Which habits do they have? How do they look at? What software do they use? Like, be a sponge. It was life-changing for me. And then long story short, I couldn't find stage time in Boston because there's only 3 open mic nights and 100 wannabe comedians. So sitting at my desk, this newsletter came across my desk about this thing called Toastmasters. I'm like, what's that?
Yeah.
I start reading. Hey, wait a minute. Here's a place I could get stage time during the day. Comedy clubs are only open at night. I could fail twice a day.
Yeah.
So I walked into my first Toastmasters club. There was maybe 12 people there. And I noticed something very different from the comedy club. These people were warm, encouraging, and sober. So I immediately joined 4 Toastmaster clubs because I wanted to quadruple my failure rate. You want to be better at anything, quadruple your failure rate and you'll get better faster. You can't but help it. And then 7 years later, found myself in the World Championship of Public Speaking, competing against 25,000 contestants, and had a great coach, Mark Brown.
Yeah.
I was never the same. And I was fortunate enough to win the contest. And then all of a sudden, everyone started coming out of the woodwork to learn how to be a better speaker. And I didn't want to do that, but that's what they did. And I found I have a gift for helping others. And so that's what I do. Wrote a book called Unforgettable Presentations with my coach and my mentor, Patricia Fripp.
I love that you have such an incredible story. And I think, we've spoken about that before. Number one, I look up to you, and I hope you know that you are the epitome in my eyes of resilient, of,
Look
falling
at the
down.
mirror.
Ah, you're too kind. You're too kind. But I mean, you inspire me, right? Because thinking about, I have, so like you mentioned, right? You started that Subway business, you failed, but then you got back up. You decided to try something new because it's easy, right? When you fail at something to say, number one, have a pity party, which is okay, so long as you get back up. And I don't know, Darren, if I'd mentioned to you, I'd started my own business as well, but back in 2013 and failed, lost all of my savings, and I just couldn't believe it. And I thought, how am I going to go on? But I did go on, right? And I took other risks. And that's what it's about. It's about taking risks, and it's about what I think is so important that you mentioned, being a sponge and realizing that we don't know it all. And there's so many folks that we can learn from. Yes, be a sponge. And then you also mentioned, learning from Chris McGuire. And so for audience members who don't know who Chris is, so Chris is also one of my other coaches. Chris McGuire, actually, if the folks on the call who are listening in have ever heard of the Martha Stewart and Justin Bieber roast.
Snoop. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so he did two, right? He did the Justin Bieber and Snoop Dogg roast, and then he did the Justin Bieber and Martha Stewart roast. And I believe Chris was the executive producer, right? And he wrote Martha Stewart's jokes for that roast.
Correct.
So yeah, so you learn from the best, and that's why I feel so fortunate that I've learned from you and I've learned from Chris, and you've introduced me to some incredible people who are just always willing to, number one, help, but are so incredible with the advice that you provide. And so, you talked a little bit about project management, and so when you did fail your Subway business, and then when you went into business for yourself, because I know you have a flourishing business currently, are there, and I know you're not project management certified. I know you don't do project management per se, but I often say project management can be applied to everything in life,
Oh, absolutely.
right? So can you share, like, do you, what do you think as far as project management principles, methodologies, what are some things that you think could be applied to your business that are considered project management?
Well, it's knowing what you're, in my opinion, again, like you said, not a certified project manager. I've presented and taught project managers how to give better presentations, actually over in Belgium, even with Ed Tate. I don't know if you knew that or not, but
I didn't.
I think it's also knowing what you need to manage and what you need to delegate.
Yeah.
So I have a business. I love what I do. And I book myself as a keynote speaker. So, but I have a speaker agent who, if I hand her gigs that people come to me, inquiries from me, she loves it. Here's the thing. My business, my staff is not designed to write and negotiate contracts.
Mm-hmm.
So I would rather give away a percentage of income so someone who is good at it, like I could teach my people to do that, but instead I learned, okay, I need to give away a percentage of everything that comes into me so I don't take more time from my team away from what they're good at.
Yeah.
And, COVID was happening and I just was inspired. I'm like, I have to write this book, 17 Minutes to Your Dream. I came up with this idea for a 77-day challenge, challenging speakers and presenters to do a video every day, Facebook Live, Instagram Live, YouTube Live, whichever format they wanted. Because I taught them stage time, stage time, stage time. Well, during COVID, nobody is given stage time because we can't meet in person.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, where could we apply the principles? So I had them do Facebook Live every day for 77 days. A lot of these people barely presented once a month. But when you need to get comfortable talking to that camera like it's a person, you need to be more conversational. Like I have no doubt, this is podcast number 8. When you look at 108, you are going to see a different Parmjit because you will have had that experience. And so when I realized, okay, I need to write this book, I was the underdog in the speaking world, and then I accomplished something amazing. Now I'm writing a screenplay, trying to sell it to Hollywood. I'm the underdog again. I don't know people in that world. So I realized the 77-day challenge was so powerful for people. I woke up one morning, I'm like, I have to make this a book. So I reached out to a friend, Henry DeVries, who is a publisher. And what I realized is that is a separate project that is not in my lane, and it brings me no joy. However, I wanted the book done. So I brought it to someone to be the project manager because I knew I didn't have the bandwidth to do it well. I could do it. I could save money. But I think it's understanding the value of a project manager. But here's the thing, as a project manager, you have to realize the value you have. And here's what they want from you. They don't want just a project manager. The world does not need another project manager. The world needs project managers that are all in. That if I give it to you, I know you're going to communicate, you're going to let me know if there's a challenge, but no matter what, you take this on and you have ownership of it. But as project managers, we have to sell that because a lot of people will they could do it themselves. Yeah, you could, but not as well and not without more stress. You give it to a good project manager, you're taking away stress. If the person is a good project manager. So I kind of went off on a tangent, but I don't know if I'm answering your question or not.
No, you are, because that's exactly it. Everything that you mentioned, all of those are components of project management. And I'm so glad that you mentioned, communicating and, being transparent and sharing that, look, I'm going to take this project and I'm now going to remove the stress and I'm going to handle all of these tasks and I'm going to delegate, and I will delegate them to whomever they need to be delegated to, because folks who may or may not know, at PMI stands for the Project Management Institute, and it is through PMI whom I'm certified. And by the way, anything I say about PMI, these are opinions of my own, and in no way am I representing PMI. But PMI has taught us that project management is 90% communication, and it's so true. But no, I think you answered that perfectly. And so, Darren, I have another question, and it goes kind of back to risk. So when you started your own business, okay, so when you got the subway and it failed, and obviously, right, you probably knew some of the risks beforehand as you were going into, at least that's my assumption, and maybe you could talk a little bit about that. But then also when you decided to pivot and say, okay, you know what, I'm going to go into comedy, were there naysayers? And how did you decide to move forward despite their maybe ill feelings about what you were pursuing?
Well, I think naysayers are essential to our growth. But we have to frame it right. Naysayers are going to bring up issues and problems, some real, some just in their head. But it's a test. If you can look at every naysayer as a test, you just have to pass the test, and you have to pass the naysayer. So to say, were there any naysayers, or to ask if were there any naysayers, were there any people who weren't naysayers? Because, and I get it, I understand it now, but back then I'm like, well, you don't believe in me or my dream? Well, I didn't have any of the skill set except persistence. God didn't give me the gift of making people laugh. God gave me the gift of persistence to learn how, which makes me a better teacher of it because I wasn't given a gift. There's a lot of funny people out there that can't teach you how to be funnier because they're just naturally funny. They haven't learned the process. Like our friend Chris McGuire, he is like a process guy. And so that's what also makes him a great teacher. But I had to learn it the hard way. So to say I had naysay, I'll give you an example. We have to consider the source of the naysayer. So in the stand-up comedy world, the one irrefutable habit was stage time. Any day that I didn't get on stage is a day that I didn't grow.
Mm-hmm.
What? I thought I had to be good. They said, no, you have to go up to get good. So any day you don't go up, you don't get any better. You'll have good days, you'll have bad days, but you have to get yourself up there. And it was scary. I remember sitting in my little 1976 brown Rabbit, Volkswagen Rabbit, sitting outside a comedy club. Now, this isn't a big comedy club. At the beginning, you don't get to play the big showrooms. You're in the back of a Chinese restaurant, standing on a milk crate with a bulb hanging from the ceiling as a spotlight. It's horrible. And so I would sit outside of my car and I listened to this song. You may be too young to know, but Right Now by Van Halen. And right now, the way the song goes is right now, all that matters is one thing. Right now is all that matters. So I was motivating myself to just go up there. It didn't matter how I did. It mattered whether or not I went up there. Mm-hmm. So they really beat this into me, my mentors. And it's funny because every mentor, every class I took, that was the one thing they all had in common. So I'll give you the perspective. My mentors were impressed when, if I couldn't get stage time in Boston, I would drive 2.5 hours to Portland, Maine to go on stage for 5 minutes for free and drive back and go to my day job the next morning.
Wow. Wow.
My mentors were impressed. My high school friends who didn't understand it told me I was stupid. And I get it from their perspective. So we've got to consider not just the naysayer, but where are they coming from? And just like even project managers, a project manager is not a project manager is not a project manager. Mm-hmm. There's many different facets, many different industries, and many different skill sets. And guess what? There are great project managers. There are horrible project managers. There are negative project managers. So we've got to realize that even if they're in our industry, they might not get it. So my friend said I was stupid. Now I get to fly all over the world. I get to do what I love to do for a living. Now they say I'm lucky.
Yeah.
So apparently you can go from stupid to lucky. If anyone ever called you stupid, chances are you might be on the exact correct path.
Yeah. So
I always say, like in my book, 17 Minutes to Your Dream, you are the CEO of your dream.
Absolutely.
You're the CEO of your career. If your career is important, guess what? You choose where you work, where you don't work, where your boundaries are, how you act. Again, who's going to get promoted? Who's going to get hired? That project manager that's all in, that they're going to figure it out. They're going to stay up late if they have to. But if they're all in, that's going to be noticed. They're more likely to get promoted. They're more likely to get recommended.
Yeah.
So I had one naysayer tell my parents, because keep in mind, I ended up living at home while I pursued my dream, dug myself out of debt from my Subway failure. And so I'm 36 years old, still living at home as a speaker, getting paid once in a while, but not enough to pay my bills from it. So I had a day job. So this naysayer called my parents and said, you need to kick him out so he grows up.
Yeah.
And guess what? He actually wasn't wrong.
Yeah.
I get it, but I persisted and I finally figured it out. But I totally understand and respect what he did. And he actually thought he had my best interest at heart, and he did. Yeah. So sometimes naysayers, the worst naysayers are the nice, polite ones, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. And I love that, because I think that you had to get uncomfortable, be kicked out to grow. And I think so for me, and I think I love that you mentioned that sometimes you just have to do it. Like you had to get on stage. Yes, you were afraid. Maybe you didn't have as much confidence in your abilities, but you had to just do it to get better. And I'm glad you said that, because starting this podcast, I've always wanted to start a podcast for years. I've always wanted to either be on radio or do a podcast, and I hadn't started yet because I made all the excuses, right? oh, I don't have the right equipment to start the podcast. I don't have the right name to start the podcast. I don't have any guests who I would be on my show to start the podcast. And I remember I was having a conversation with my best friend, and she knew that I wanted to start the podcast. And I for folks who are listening in who may not know, I just recently gotten laid off from a position in a company. And so now I'm worried about the finances, and I'm thinking, well, can I buy the equipment to start the podcast when I just got laid off and I don't have I'm using all of my savings. And so anyway, long story short, my best friend says to me, she goes, just do it. To exactly what you just said, right? She said, just do it. She says, you're going to start it. And she said, put a date on the calendar, and that is going to be the first day of your podcast. And so I think she and I had this conversation on a Monday, and by Friday, my first episode had aired. And again, I'm constantly learning, but yeah, I just had to do it. And yes, I was uncomfortable, and I'm sure if I had listened to the opinions of some others, I did also have a few people who told me maybe this is not the route you want to go. I wouldn't be doing this. So yeah, no, I think that was amazing. And so I'm curious. So I know, Darren, your family has been incredibly supportive, right, throughout your career.
Most of them.
Most okay. Well, okay. So let's actually talk about your parents, who I know, just based on our conversations, have been incredibly supportive, and then the folks who weren't supportive, and how did you again move forward in spite of that, in spite of the folks who weren't as supportive, as well as the folks who were your biggest supporters, your parents.
Well, keep in mind, I gained credibility by my actions.
Yeah.
So my actions to my comedy mentors, the people I took classes with, the headliners in Boston who I looked up to, because I was willing to do what most wouldn't.
Yeah.
So in their mind, I'm on the upswing. Now, I love my friends and family and my mom and dad. You know, I have great mom and dad, married 67 years. However, they didn't understand it. They didn't understand me as an entrepreneur and a speaker. They didn't know what a speaker was. They knew what a comedian was. And so when I told them, I went home and I finally had this idea, you know, after the Brian Tracy quote, and I walked home and I said, Mom, Dad, I want to be a comedian.
Yeah.
And they didn't know what to say, because that's not who I was. That was my cousin, Johnny. He was the funny one. I wasn't funny, but I had such clarity. And so it's almost like people who love you and don't know what to say and don't know how to encourage you because it makes no sense to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I get it now, but it was really hard back then.
Yeah.
Now I can see it. It's obvious. Like, of course, why would they support something that makes no logical sense?
Yeah.
However, it was in my heart. I got that one laugh by accident, and I'm like, I'm going to figure this out. I'll just make more accidents. But it was also a passion and a dream of mine, because growing up, my cousin Johnny, the funny one, he would change a room, the emotion in a room from, you know, come from a Polish family at holidays, and he would recap Saturday Night Live skits, and he would have everybody laughing. And my aunts, who are twins, they would literally laugh in harmony. It's like, waff, waff, waff. Like you couldn't not laugh once they got going. And so just watching and that he could bring such joy to my family with what he said and how he said it.
Yeah.
And I was so admired that, jealous of that, whatever you want to call it. I was all of the above. And I wanted that badly because I wanted to bring joy to people.
Yeah.
And so even though I went the business route and then the comedy route, both of those expertise, if you will, came together as a speaker, because comedy was the greatest background. I have confidence now. If I can handle, you know, the back of a bowling alley with 12 people with the TV going, you sitting in a convention audience, I don't care who you are. I got this, you know? Yeah. Now, I don't want to say it's always perfect or anything, but I've been in tougher situations. It's those tough situations that grow us. But one of the toughest was just your question dealing with non-supportive people. I can't imagine project managers or any field where your spouse doesn't get it or support you.
Yeah, yeah.
I can't even calculate that. How do you do it? How do you
Um,
do it?
It's incredibly difficult. So when I opened that business in Florida that I was telling you about, when I opened that business, I was dating somebody and he didn't get it. And so, it goes back to, he was a naysayer, but it wasn't ill-intentioned. It was just, he didn't get it. And he wanted to, he was looking out for my best interest. And so I moved to Florida, which is eventually what ended that relationship. But he wasn't supportive. And he did say to me, uh, you're an idiot for doing this. You're an idiot for pursuing this. But yeah, but I was so feisty. I think that's just who I am. I'm in my nature. I'm the black sheep of my family. And anytime somebody tells me you can't do this, I've always just had this attitude. Let me show you. Not only am I going to do it, I'm going to do it and I'm going to do it well. And so yeah, exactly. Pull up my sleeves. And so yeah, I definitely had that experience also. And I don't know if you know this about me, Darren. So my I started speaking by accident, or maybe not by accident. So I was working for a healthcare IT company. That's where I kind of got my start in project management. And and I'm a patient. A lot of folks know, I've been in and out of the healthcare system for years. And so they needed a speaker to speak to a room of physicians because they were promoting the use of EHR, which stands for electronic health record, or EMR, electronic medical record. And so I said, sure, I'll speak. And so I got up on stage. And as a matter of fact, this photo that you see behind me, that is me on stage for the very first time. This was in 2010. And so I get up on stage and I'm talking to the audience, and I'm very nervous. I'm so nervous. Again, this is a room full of physicians. I mean, they are articulate, intelligent individuals, and here I am, this young girl talking to them about why they need to implement EHRs. And so I get on stage and I talked to the audience about a time when my house burned down, because my house had burned down, and in that, yeah, so this was actually in New Jersey. So my house burned down and all of my paper medical records at the time burned down. Just the ones that I had in my possession, all of them burned down with the house. So the house was completely destroyed. And so I'm speaking to the audience and, I tell them this, and obviously everyone's, oh my gosh, her house burned down. And then I said, but the insurance gave us $70,000 to help. I said, thank God for insurance, right? I wasn't trying to be funny. I really wasn't. I was just being me, and everyone laughed. And I thought, huh, not only did it give me confidence, it just made me realize I could do this. I think I want to be a speaker. So
Nice.
yeah, yeah. So, Darren, and so I realize we're getting to the end of our episode, and I think we covered a lot. And so, for folks who are listening, yeah, yeah, please.
One quick, just I realized I had this in my office, so I just grabbed it. For those of you watching the video portion, one of my naysayers said, "You will never earn a dollar going on stage and making people laugh." And I remember it was one of my first gigs. All they paid me was gas money because it was far away from civilization.
Yeah,
So it was Springfield, Massachusetts, far away from where I live. So they gave you $25 for gas.
yeah,
So technically it was for gas, but I'm like, they're paying me. So after the show, now I don't even remember how it went, but it went.
yeah.
A bartender handed me $25 and I handed the five back. I said, give me 5 ones. And the first one he handed back to me was the first dollar I ever made. And I have it right here.
Oh my gosh.
Now, I have a comedy tragedy mask.
Yeah.
I used to love this. I still love the idea. So I took the dollar and I stuck it in the tragedy's mouth. Bam.
I love that. And I love that you kept that. I love that you kept that. So Again, Darren, this has been such a great conversation. Such a great conversation. For folks who are listening, this is a completely unscripted conversation. So this was, yeah, this is off the cuff. And Darren, thank you for that sign in the back. I'm gonna gloat a little bit. Because I love it. So there's a hashtag Parmjit fan. So thank you for that. I'm a fan of yours. So that means a lot. And again, just thank you, Darren, for agreeing to be on the show today. I think this was a great conversation. And again, it just speaks to who you are as an individual and why I take so much pride in having the opportunity to work with you during the times I get the opportunity. So thank you so very much.
My pleasure. And if you're a project manager and you need to deliver presentations, check out our book, Deliver Unforgettable Presentations.
It is excellent. I can attest to that.